Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Defenders. Now, this year, Defend Defenders marks a significant milestone later on in the year. 20 years defending. And in that defending, we're promoting, protecting, and strengthening the rights of human rights defenders in East Africa and the Horn of Africa. And to reflect on this remarkable journey, I am joined by our Executive Director, Mr. Hassan Shire. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to go down memory lane. 2005. 20 years later, 2025, we want to just start with how Defend Defenders comes to be.
Yeah, Defenders come to a being officially when we launched it in Entebbe, 2005. But prior to that, there's events and history which forms the background of that eventual launch. To start with, as an activist, we were part of a global struggle to seek recognition of the tremendous value of the work of human rights defenders globally. So the global community of human rights organizations lead to active campaign in New York and in Geneva and elsewhere to convince the world that the chain of human rights protection is not complete unless we acknowledge the drivers from communities, the individuals who stand up to denounce violations, their work toward the protection of human rights. As you may recall, the global community, that particular time, the acknowledgement for the protection of human rights defenders stopped short of the national human rights institutions. There were no word related to human rights activists, human rights defenders, individuals who are doing great work at community level, who are in fact the eyes and the ears of all the stakeholders who does protection of human rights defenders worldwide. So in 1998, specifically December, while activists, including myself, stood in Paris to welcome the celebrations of the 50th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we welcome it, the announcement by the General Assembly of the UN on 9 December, what we call it now, proclamation related to Declaration of Human Rights Defenders. So from that time onward, there were another series of events and milestones which have been achieved prior to Defend Defenders' work. So then you find Secretary General, the late Kofi Annan, appointing a very brilliant human rights defender from Pakistan, Hina Jilani, to become his representative to promote and popularize and take account on violations there too of the new declaration. That was, I think, in 2011, right after. And then there were other events which have taken place, including formation of Frontline, which is a celebration. In fact, Mary Lowlott, the founder, and also the first deputy director, Andrew Anderson, and later director, now retired also, they were part of the gathering in Paris. And in that moment of that feeling, they felt to follow up on the protection of human rights defenders globally because of hearing the testimonies, what have transpired in Paris, mothers coming from Algeria, from Chile, from Argentina, whose husbands and their ones children have been kidnapped, tortured, and disappeared, listening people coming from Ogoni land who, because of their wealth, it become a curse, so that the rivers and the lakes are being poisoned, and they were not getting anything in return. So hundreds, thousands of human rights defenders came to testify and do that. And then there were other mechanisms also emerged prior to launch of DefendDefenders, including European Union guidelines on human rights defenders, African Commission on Human and People's Rights, or the African Union branch of human rights, also adopting Granby Declaration and Kigali Declaration, which culminated in similar mechanisms for the protection of human rights defenders at continental level. With all that mechanisms, and this is important for DefendDefenders, in place, and international goodwill existing with all these legal and other mechanisms, still human rights defenders in the continent and all over the world were still being maimed, tortured, disappeared, arrested, and trumped up judges, and denied homeland by making them forced disappearance. So a group of human rights defenders, including myself, found ourselves in exile because there were no local mechanism to support human rights defenders in where we came from. So we found ourselves in exile, but we questioned, because we were aware and we were part of that campaign which galvanized the global community to create that goodwill. So we questioned it. Because of that goodwill, because of that mechanisms, why these mechanisms could not be translated on the ground? Why human rights defenders have to flee to cultures and the countries which they are not part of? Is there a way to make activism locally rewarding and meaningful? And if that fails, make adjustment at the regional level, at neighborhood country level, so that they will not be disconnected and they can continue their work. Where's that support? That was the question. So that thinking have led to research on why support is not available, both political and diplomatic support for human rights defenders on the ground and also in exile. And that brought that research at York University, because I want to make the history a bit shorter, 4 gaps, which was a nagging. Gap number 1 was the protection, both preventive protection and reactive protection were not available. So there were no networks and coalitions of human rights defenders supporting each other to come to into assistance when their fellow human rights defender region A to region B safety, or country A to country B safety, and solidarity was lacking. So that's one gap. The other gap was the capacity to do protection work as a human rights defender. It needs skills. It's not just, it's good, when you jump out and say that, oh, let me denounce this one, because this is a violation which is not acceptable, and raise your voice. It's a beginning of activism, but it's not the end.
That's true.
You need to have tools of interrogating if there is any violations, systematical reporting, cross-checking the truth, and then making the denunciations and the following up that advocacy. It needs how to protect your information from harmful groups who may want to steal or use against you. it needs physical and psychosocial support for your wellness because of the danger of the work human rights defenders are exposed to. And it needs to appreciate mechanisms available for protection in case challenge arises. What are the national mechanism of your country? What are the regional mechanism in the continent? What are the sub-regional even in the East Africa? What are the continental, the Banjul, mechanism? And then international at Geneva, what are the mechanisms available for human rights defenders in case of distress? So all these was taken into account when we found there's a nagging gap. The third one is what we call it, feasibility and recognition of the important work of human rights defenders doing, raising their voices and raising their viewpoint at various gatherings and various forums. So advocacy, researching their conditions, bringing them out, very, very much department you work, is also another key to bring the voices of human rights defenders, particularly those who are marginal, who are in far places, to bring their voices even to bear in diplomats in Geneva or mechanisms in Banjul or others to make them heard of the issue they are dealing with. It's also another pillar of raising awareness of the work of human rights defenders. The fourth one, which we can say that is still either some part withered away, but others still, is making a protocol for protection. Without a protocol, there will be a resource mismatch, there will be a duplication of efforts, and there will be also sometimes abuse of efforts. So therefore, we have created for the first time a standard way of exchanging information for those who are dealing with supposed freedom of expression. We have one platform. So if, for instance, Ethiopian journalist comes into exile, we all coordinate those organizations internationally and regionally and nationally who are working for the protection and promotion of the work of journalists. And similarly, other thematics, like environment, land rights, in all. So those four gaps, when we discovered it, we were not pretending that the places where we were, in this case in Toronto, we can set up a mechanism for the protection of human rights defenders on the continent. So we have to relocate and come to the ground and recall all the groups we have interacted with who were part of our target research and bring them into Entebbe and then present the findings to them and ask them from where we have to move here. It all depends on all of us. So that leads then what has happened.
Yes. And from that particular conference that happened it ran from the 30th of October in 2005 to the 4th of November 2005. And on the last day, the 5th day of the conference, you make mention of the need for a network. So a network was launched, and that particular network is the Eastern Horn of Africa Human Rights Defenders Network. Taking a look at the progress of that network over the 20 years, how would you rate how it has changed and grown over the years?
Yeah, you see, the launching of the network itself, it has not featured into the agenda of the conference. It was a side meeting of the human rights defenders desiring to have a strong and also at the same time loose coalition or network to follow up what has transpired at the meeting. I could say it was the launch itself become a baptism of fire because a group who came from Ethiopia who were part of the delegates found themselves they could not go back to Ethiopia. You are coming 3 days meeting for 2 hours flight, and then your name is being splashed across the national TV and others, and you are facing capital punishment, a crime which you have not committed. You have attempted overthrowing of the constitutional order of Ethiopia, simply because they were human rights defenders who are interrogating and investigating by electoral violence in 2005, which has happened in Ethiopia. So we all become into exile, all of us. Some of the activists, I don't want to mention it. And that challenge itself, I've challenged Secretariat, which was very small, volunteers, to find a way to immediately practice how to fill those gaps which have been identified. So immediately it became objective, it became a project, registered in the Republic of Uganda, and a regional organization was registered in the Republic of Uganda, and it went to work. I could say that over those years, 20 years, there were one milestone, then another milestone, another milestone, stone. It's beyond belief. Work which we thought as an activist, it will be much more on the field, much more on the moves. It became a life-saving work. You can appreciate in various times there were spikes. There were al-Bashir indictment spike. There were Kenya election violence in 2007. There was a Burundi spike, Senegal, now Sahel spike, Sudan, big collapse, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia as a constant crisis. You name it. In Mozambique now. So the challenge facing the network has never been too small to think that it doesn't merit our collective actions. All the time, there have been crises, and we have been equipping ourselves and preparing to meet those crises the best possible way, where we can mitigate the inherent risk associated with people who are working, defending the rights of others. That mitigation itself comes with a lot of tools to be deployed. And DefendDefenders were able, over a period of time, to adopt those changing environment. For instance, when we were launching the network, ICT, we considered only as a tool to equip human rights defenders to computers and others. But we never thought that we need a digital security platform to teach them how to protect themselves. So whenever those additional threats come, we always were ready to adopt it and to come with tools to mitigate those risks.
Yes. I want to now you to speak on you as a human rights defender in 2005. If you were to look forward then and see how DefendDefenders has grown over the years, are you pleased with what you see, the change that has come, the impact that it has had on human rights defenders?
Indeed, yes, I'm very much pleased to see what collectively, let me put it that, collectively we have able to achieve. How many human rights defenders who otherwise could have been in a peril, we have saved their lives, saved their work, and empowered them to relaunch themselves. I can't count. It's thousands of human rights defenders all over the world now. But more, one could not have never imagined it, particularly those people who were at the launch. This network could be of this force to be reckoned with globally and continentally, because of the efforts start very small. The people who were also part of the journey, most of us, we have not been expecting this type of organizational growth in terms of numbers and in terms of reach to all the continent now. We respond instantly what's happening in Liberia. Protection case in Liberia and protection case in Uganda, it takes the same time to respond and save and evacuate the human rights defender in question. Similarly, Sudan, with all the challenges now of lack of communications, lack of that, but still, defenders have developed a way to make sure that those defenders also benefit of our protection program. So it's a pride, and but also we must also all the time look at it, the people who are doing the work. Defenders is nothing without the people who are themselves a frontline human rights defender, helping the other frontline defenders whom we have said that we are going to work for their safety. So if there is any appreciation, I think it goes beyond me. It goes to the messenger, the drivers, the junior staff, the senior staff of defenders who have been in sync, have been doing a great work to reach out needy human rights defenders in the continent.
Okay, now your message that you'd maybe share with, you've mentioned the staff, the HRD who reaches out to defenders, the partners that have supported defenders along the years. What is your message to them?
Each and every group you have mentioned, my message is thank you.
And
because they have traveled with us a long journey. They have been supporters, they have been workers, they have been well-wishers, and they formed a broader network of defenders. And as a director of this organization, I could name them, thousands of them, because I personally met them and know them. But sufficient to say that is that thank you so much.
Okay. Our last one for this conversation in particular has to do with the human rights landscape that defenders has to work in, and the HRD that reaches out to defenders. How do you see that they have changed over the years? What has changed or what remains the same all through?
You see, human rights, it's said that it will never be enough. There's no community in this world who could say that we have reached the utmost of enjoyment of the rights and the freedoms under any book, either it's the Bible or the Quran or the constitutions, because human needs are constantly changing. Therefore, the bar of human rights entitlement going up all the time. You might find one issue we are dealing with here may not be that much relevant in other capitals, but they have also their own, which is not relevant here. So it means, so it's a human growth. So it has to continue. But now what's utmost challenging is that there were so the clear lines of people who support human rights defenders' work and the people who are trying to diminish and devalue, let me put that, at various fora about the work of human rights defenders, not recognizing them and all that. But this time we are facing a new reality because the traditional supporters of human rights work now are questioning the model of human rights discourse we have in this world for the past 8 years. So where support was coming may not be now, may not be enthusiastically there. And so that adds another dilemma, another dimension of struggle to global community of human rights protectors. But as I said, human rights defenders, they are resilient. They work under constant adversaries, and they overcome many challenges because they have a lot of victories, including, ushering democracy in a dictatorship country. So human rights defenders will again emerge, I'm sure, and become more stronger by galvanizing support, because there's a lot of goodwill in this world, by galvanizing support and staging back and continuing the work they were doing.
Okay. Do you have any last message for those who are watching this episode and listening to it?
Yeah, I think let's celebrate the work of human rights defenders. Let's celebrate the work of women human rights defenders. Let us celebrate the work of environmental, land rights, extractive resource activists. Let us celebrate the work of journalists. Let us celebrate the work of youth activists, particularly those who are doing some sort of a stand-up, let me call it, an emerging youth activists who are bravely doing individual human rights defense on their own without bothering to create organizations and others, but standing up instantly. These are now the model for human rights protection and promotion in the East, in Africa. So let's celebrate also the workers who work in organized format to do protection of human rights defenders. And let us celebrate our supporters, our donors, and our well-wishers. I want to say you happy 20th anniversary and thank you for traveling with us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hassan, for joining us on Conversations with Defenders. For the next few months, we're definitely going to be highlighting and going down memory lane to see how the vision that you had has evolved over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.